Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, whatever it is at your place currently. I'm happy to invite you or welcome you at a screening or a debate after a movie, The World According to My Dad, which is organized by KineDok. KineDok is a project of alternative distribution organized by Institute of Documentary Films. This year, KineDok is celebrating its 10th anniversary, and they organize a very special event and events to celebrate its birthday in each of KineDok countries. The birthday party is taking place this Thursday, 17th of October. So please follow KineDok on Facebook or Instagram and find the birthday party near to your town and join them. Part of the celebration is also the streaming of a movie that we're going to have a debate about, The World According to My Dad, by Marta Kovářová, and my lovely, I'm very happy that I can be part of the debate about this movie because it covers many of the issues of our days, like climate change and what can we do about it. I'm very happy to welcome my guests or the guests of this debate, as mentioned before, very inspiring and knowledgeable people from across Europe. So it's my pleasure to welcome Olga Körner, who is a community organizer at Greenpeace Hungary, also a head of Boligo Community Space. Then also Ondřej Kolínský, who is an analyst at FAMU Klimatu and a researcher at Czech Technical University. His research focus covers economic aspects of green transformation, innovation, and regional policies. And finally, I'm happy to welcome Kateřina Kolouchová, who is an analyst at Facts on Climate. And she focuses on climate policy and legislation at Czech and also the European level. Very happy to welcome you. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning. One last thing that I wanted to mention is also that until 15th of October, the audience, you can watch the movie online via kinedok.net. To watch it, please contact KineDok at Facebook or Instagram or email, and they will send you a voucher. You can watch it that way, and I highly recommend it. Now, let us get to the debate or the discussion itself. I wanted to ask you as an initial question, what were some of your first impressions or ideas, thoughts that stuck with yourself after watching the movie? What was something that really made you think? Let's start with Kateřina, maybe.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this debate. Well, I have to say I like the movie as kind of a personal story of father and daughter just trying to pursue some effort to pursue this global carbon tax. And yeah, I liked to see how they grew closer and closer over the time. But at the same time, I found this whole idea a bit naive, if I'm frank, and hard actually to pursue or succeed with it in the current state of global affairs. But what I think it did pretty well is that it opens up the debate about how the global climate politics or policies look like. And I think that's a really good starter, especially in Czechia, but maybe in foreign audiences as well, if the film is screened around Europe, just to talk about what we actually think about the current climate policies, what we know about them, for example, because I think actually that there is a lot that people don't know about this level of climate affairs. So yeah, that's what I think it brings to the debate. And I think this is a quite new actually form to look into the climate politics, which I haven't noticed before. And yeah, so that's it. I'm happy to talk about it more later.
Maybe Olga, if you want to take the mic.
Yeah, sure. I can go next. So also thank you for the invite. Yeah, for me, it was at the same time really good that this picture or like this movie showed that like normal, regular people can have theories, opinions, ambition to change the world, and they can like get to places like COP and meet with decision makers and such things. But at the same time, while I was watching the movie, I was really thinking about good advocacy. I think they were really amateurs on this field, and they didn't really go through the like kind of the pillars of a good advocacy campaign, for example. And I think the first point where we already knew that this will never happen or this campaign won't be successful is that they were aiming too high, which is at the same time so inspiring that they didn't stop and they really believed in something. I think this is something that is really missing from a lot of people. But at the same time, because of this high ambition, that from zero, like they had no organization behind them, they had no like real climate expertise or decision makers, no one. So it was just the two of them. They didn't have any allies, and they were aiming to change literally the whole world, how it works. So this is a really high ambition. And like they already knew, I think, at the back of their mind that this is not a winnable case. So they knew that they would fail. And I think in advocacy, it's really important to first start with like smaller scale cases that you can, like, there's a chance that you will actually win, because that's how you can like build like relationships and allies with other people, with masses, with organizations. And from there, you can go up and up. And I was thinking about Greenpeace, for example, like how it started, like they were only focusing on whales, for example, which is like a very exact topic, like, okay, whales, and do something about that so that they can't hunt them. And as the time went by and Greenpeace became bigger and bigger and it became a world organization, now Greenpeace is dealing with like world scale policies in climate. So I think you really have to build up your advocacy work, and this is what was missing.
Thank you for the response. Yeah. What about you, Ondřej? What do you think of it?
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me. All right, I agree with everything that my first speakers said, so I'm not going to repeat it. But for the sake of discussion, let me be a little bit harsher, because what I felt like a bit of arrogance in there was a lot of mansplaining for my taste, and there was a like not really deep understanding of how the policies work. The guy literally speaks about reading one paper, maybe a couple more for the context, and he has this genius idea that's going to solve everything. How come nobody has thought about it before? And actually, a lot of people in the film, they are like some of the leading tech experts in the topic, and they explain a lot of good reasons why this might not work. And the guy is like, yeah, we need to convince them. We need to push harder. We need to aim higher. We need to contact the European Commission. We need to contact the UN people, and they need to understand it. We need to explain it to them. This I don't know. It feels like you're using a lot of people's time, a lot of people's attention, push something that really is not gonna work, and there are really good reasons why it's not gonna work. So it is aiming high. It can be good, but at the same time, it can come through as a little bit arrogant, and maybe if they listen better to what the reasons are, they could have changed the approach or something. That really is something that struck me as a little bit like cringy feeling, because you know that there's always, every discussion you do, there's always this one person at the end that catches you and and it was the guy, and starts explaining their theory, like why you are completely wrong, why the world is turning around another axis, and they start explaining it to you, and they don't want to listen, they don't want to discuss, they just want to convince you. And it actually happened in the film. There was a panel discussion. They caught the people, and you could see the people like trying to leave already. And the guy was like, no, you haven't listened to my theory yet. And I know it from the other side, and I don't know, it can be a little bit too much sometimes. So yeah, let's just for the sake of like having more opinions, let me drop something more harsh.
Yeah, thank you. I think that a lot of has been said that we can cover later as well in the discussion, because there were many topics already, such as good advocacy, or what it means to be really creating lasting relationships and allies. What is the role of that in combating climate change, and also some what would we call it, like a reasonable expectations of what we can achieve, and what are the realistic steps that we can take. Maybe shortly, because we already jumped into it, whether it's a good idea or not, but we didn't really talk about the concept that the film itself is I guess focusing on, the global carbon tax. Would any of you want to maybe explain, and then say some remarks on that, what global carbon tax or carbon tax itself is, and how can it function? Maybe let's continue with Ondřej, because you really know it.
Okay. Well, I think it's partly explained in the film. So the idea itself is fine. We could discuss some problem. This isn't more like an academic discussion, because we're never gonna get to a point where this is on the table. So we could discuss why this may not work. We can discuss different price levels in the world. So carbon tax of the same amount will have different effects in the USA than in Central Africa, for example, because the 100 euros is a different amount of money in these places. It's like heavily market based, so it can have some shortcomings in this regard. But otherwise, no, it's a perfect policy. It would definitely be much better than what we have currently. But the problem is that you can't push it through. And yeah, just briefly. It was mentioned in the film that a small fraction of carbon emissions is taxed currently. They said it's like 20. By now it's like 25, 26, maybe you know more recent numbers. So about a quarter of all emissions are being paid for. It is partly taxes, partly trading allowances, emission trading allowances, like we have in Europe. And they are different levels, obviously. They are different prices, which is problematic. At the same time, it's easier to decarbonize some sectors than others. And to be fair, it's one big mess that we have in the world. And it's not because we think this is efficient. It's because it can only be pushed through politically very gradually. So I feel like I don't want to be defending the current status quo. Definitely, like what they propose in the film would be much better, much more efficient towards transition. The problem is just not gonna have it anytime soon.
Kateřina, you want to react to that? Because
maybe I'll only add that, yeah, just like Ondřej said, I just checked yesterday, and about a quarter of world's emissions are currently covered by carbon pricing, and they are currently in place in about 50 countries and in about 40 regions on a regional level. And maybe what I'd like also to add, why are these like carbon pricing systems important? Like, I'd also like to add that thanks to this carbon pricing, the states receive revenue that they can use for like decarbonizing the economy or support the society. So for example, within the European trading system of allowances, we have many funds such as Modernization Fund that then actually supports the projects to reduce our carbon footprint or carbon footprint of the industry. And also, for example, in Czechia, there's this new green savings program, which is a very popular program, or also partially financed by the revenue from the emission allowances. So I think actually carbon pricing itself is a very good tool to help like these global climate goals to reduce emissions. And they also like included this part in the film. It started that they would tax the mining companies who mine fossil fuels such as oil, coal, gas, and so on, and that then the revenue would be distributed to each person in the world via so-called global climate fund, I think. Yeah, but obviously this would be like tremendously difficult to put in place. But I only wanted to point out the importance of the revenue from such system as a carbon taxes or emission trading systems.
Mhm. Thank you for that note. Yeah, I was also thinking about that because what they suggest in the movie is a global carbon tax, right? And we already know that, as you mentioned, different types or forms of carbon taxing or pricing are already functioning around the world. And I was wondering, I've read about British Columbia as one of the, I don't know, the best case scenario when it comes to somehow like socially friendly carbon pricing or carbon tax form. But maybe you can tell me more about that if that was if that's actually true, and maybe explain how does it work around the world, what are different forms that the carbon tax can take. Maybe Kateřina again?
Well, I'm not that aware of the system in British Columbia. I know that they distribute the money from the carbon tax back to the citizens as well. But maybe I can point out the one like example from Austria. They introduced like local carbon pricing, and what they do is they distribute the revenue back to the citizens via so-called klimabonus. So it means that actually each citizen of Austria receives certain amount of money every year, which comes from the carbon pricing. So yeah, I think actually this is something that could also work maybe in Czechia. I like the idea because I also think that it can kind of help the PR of the whole global climate change cause, that when people, for example, see certain amount of money in their account every year and they know that it comes directly from pricing the pollution, I think this could maybe in their head connect it with how important it is to price the pollution. But yeah, also there was some debate some years ago. I think Amos started actually about a so-called climate dividend, which would be some measure to put in place in Czechia as well. So maybe, I don't know, Ondřej can add some more.
Yeah, Ondřej.
Yeah, sure. So it's the same principle, right? You take the money from the polluting basis from the polluting activities, and you redistribute it to everyone, which by default should be somehow socially sensitive, because obviously poorer people don't consume so much carbon. But if you tax all the consumption, it's going to be transferring the money from more consuming people to less consuming people, which is from richer to poorer, more or less. Yeah, but this has the problem, as Kateřina mentioned, you also want some money to be invested in public services or in infrastructure and stuff like this. So you either redistribute it to people and wait what people do with it, which is important for the social impacts, but also if you give people money, they're not going to build trains with it. That's hard to do. They're not going to build smart grid with it. That's something you need to do, let's say, centrally or supported by the state or the union.
Yeah, thank you. Other than the carbon tax, there was also other topics in the movie that I found very interesting, because as you said, they really, the movie is about an individual or pair of a daughter and a father trying to find their way, what they can personally do with climate change. And I think that that's something that a lot of us currently are trying to figure out, what their role is in all this that we find ourselves in, and what we can do with it. And when I've read something about the movie before watching it, I've read an article or like an interview with Marta, with the main protagonist, the daughter of the physicist, and she said that she started being interested or like interested in doing the movie because she wanted to do something about climate change because of environmental grief that she suddenly started feeling more and more, also because of her 2 children and watching them and thinking about what their future is going to be like. I wondered, as you, as Olga, as a community organizer in Hungary, is that something that you somehow are facing as well during your work or personal life? What do you?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting topic of like, and it come up a lot of times, like what you can do as an individual. And yeah, I think the problem is that people are really isolated from each other. So the traditional kind of communities really disappeared, at least from Hungary or from bigger cities, for example. And I think usually when people talk about acting as an individual, I think 90% of the time we're talking about lifestyle changes. And I think the reason behind this is that the systems that we are living in are so complicated that we can't really understand them. So we feel like we don't have an impact on these very difficult to understand, very complicated systems above our heads. So we are stuck in acting as changing our lifestyle, which is a nice thing. And it's useful. I think it's useful so that we don't feel like we are hypocrites when we are advocate about sustainability or green world. So in that case, I think it's really important that we do the same thing as we want to see in the world. I think that's really important, but it's not going to bring the system change. So you can always choose not to buy the plastic bottle, but if there's still no policy on how to reduce plastic production, then what's going to happen? The system won't change by itself. It will change when like people want it to change and they show it to the decision makers. And what I really see as a solution, because usually it's like either individual action or like action as a society, like on the society level. And I think usually we really miss the part of community action, which is in between. And I think that's like one of the most powerful tools to act when you're not alone, when you're in a group where you can like share your thoughts, your feelings, you can share your power, and you can like become bigger even as an individual because you are part of a community. And with a community, I think you can change a lot of things. So, and you really come out from this lifestyle kind of action, and you can really start focusing on changing your house where you live in, changing your neighborhood that you're living, holding accountable the local decision makers together as a community, organize demonstrations, become an organization officially, and so on and so on. So I think it really gives you a lot of opportunities. So that's why we are so much focusing on building communities and showing them how to act and how advocacy works and how like this sense of community can really give you the people power that everyone seeks for. So yeah, I think acting on a community level is really important. And it's really important to set good goals that are challenging, but also not like totally not reachable goals, and to move forward from steps to step. And yeah, because I think once you face like climate change and you realize that yes, we are as people or as individuals are on some level responsible for the climate change, I think that's a really big thing on your shoulders that you have to deal with as an individual. And you can really get anxious and depressed and even more isolated from the society. And if you're a part of a community that is acting and that is like holding you together, I think you can really face these fears and bad feelings also even better.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely agree with that. And sometimes I think that every single one of us has two superpowers. One is that we are social beings, and therefore we can, as you said, gather and not be in it. I mean, the climate crisis by ourselves, but at the same time, it's a superpower because we can share all of it and learn from each other. So thank you for these words that you just said. One other thing that I was also thinking about during the movie is that I think that the second superpower that they used there is that they tried to think of the job that they already have, her being an artist and a teacher of art, and her father being a material physicist, and thinking of that as a skill or power that they can use in order to face climate change somehow. Because I think that sometimes people think of themselves that like, yeah, in order to be climate activist or do something about climate change, I have to become that or this, but it really isn't that. I think we can all participate somehow already doing the same thing that we are, just trying to find our own ways how to incorporate the environmental, not only climate, but environmental issues in the job or the community that we already have. So yeah. Is there something that you would like to comment about during what has been just said, Kateřina or Ondřej?
Maybe just a small remark. I definitely agree what you and Olga just said, and I think the systemic and individual effort need to go hand in hand. And maybe I like to point out the role of states a bit and the importance of global frameworks for the effort to reduce emissions, such as Paris Agreement or United Nations Convention on Climate Change, because I think, for example, from my experience in Czechia, that it's very important to have this global or even the European framework and the European policies. Then they like push to the Czech government to actually implement those policies in Czechia. And I'm afraid that without this global or European influence, the Czech climate policy would be even less ambitious than it is now. So I just think that state has a really important role, in setting the rules, in implementing the policies, in providing some financial support or subsidies either to the consumers or industries to decarbonize. And actually it has a big role in decarbonizing the biggest emission intensive sectors such as energy or industry or transport. And even though I definitely agree with the role of communities, I think it's difficult for a community, maybe, for example, to shut down some electricity plant, even though it plays its part, in like talking about the topic and raising the issue. But yeah, I think it's also important for all of us, all of different stakeholders, to cooperate kind of, and yeah, just to think of the climate targets and climate ambition we want to achieve, and that we agreed on actually kind of as a world, for example, in the Paris Agreement.
Ondřej, what about you? Is there something you would like to add?
I have a bit of remark because I've been super critical of the idea in the film and also their approach, but just wanted to say, like, a much more positive note, that the way it is shown, like more artistically than politically or let's say advocacy wise, the way it portrays a struggle of two people who see that something's wrong in the world and trying to bang on different doors and actually do not succeed, actually do not have the solution and do not have a way of having it seen implemented. That's something we all live through, to be fair. And it's very clear that what we currently have is not going fast enough. It's not heading towards 1.5 degree of maximum warming. Neither does it seem to be heading towards 2 degrees. So we need a lot of experimentation. We need a lot of weird methods, new ideas, and just to be completely fair, like any idea can turn out later to be the right one. So we've seen it with some of the radical protests. That very often it happens that part of the green movement says, "Oh no, you're going crazy. It is not going to help anything." But at the same time, you never know. It might open some doors. It might actually create some new awareness of something. So right now, where we stand, I don't want to make it look like, oh, the experts are already taking care of it. It's gonna be fine within 10 years. Actually, no. We need activism. We need radical experimentation. We need radical rethinking of what's going wrong, why, and how it can be changed. How the course can be shifted. So. Yeah, I would actually like to encourage like this kind of thinking and this kind of like radical questioning. Like, what if we do something completely different? I do not believe it will be a global carbon tax, but hey, who knows? 5-10 years from now, we might be sitting here actually with something like this close to implementation. So that's been the climate debate in the last 5-10 years. Always things that seemed super unlikely after a couple of years actually became much more close to reality. So I hope we are going to continue on such a radical course and actually approaching our targets that so far seem a little bit distant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that note, because that was something I was also thinking about, that so often we hear about the issue itself and the impacts of climate change, but having even a little bit more out there conversation about the solutions is not that often. and something like that coming out from being present in Czech debate is very refreshing. So I hope that we will see that more and more often. And like as you said, the spectrum of solutions that are needed is indefinite, and we never know what is going to be the thing that is going to work, and it's probably not going to be just one thing. So I'm very happy that people are curious, and I think that that's also something that lies within science itself, like just trying things. So I'm very grateful that you mentioned that. Is there some last remarks that you would like to say regarding the movie itself, or something that you would like the audience to really take from this? Maybe start with Olga.
Okay. I can really relate to what I've heard. And yeah, I think my last thought really connects to that. I think the problem sometimes with people is that we are really waiting for the solution, like the one's overall solution to this whole problem. And a lot of people say like, okay, tell me what's the solution, tell me what to do, and I'll do that. And what I would like to encourage everyone is to try and fail and try and fail as many times as possible. And yeah, think big, dream big, and question everything. And I think there's no such thing as the solution. I think we have to experiment constantly with diverse solutions, because if there's one thing we can really learn from nature is that something that is more diverse, it's more resilient. So I think we have to use the same pattern and find diverse and efficient solutions for this very complex problem. So I'm just encouraging everyone to try out new things, and yeah.
What about you, Kateřina?
Yeah, I will agree with this idea of diversification of policies and strategies, but maybe also to add some hope. I'd like to add that many, like if we are talking, for example, about, and it's not the only part of the transformation, that's not what I'm saying, but if we are talking, for example, about the technological part of decarbonization, I'd like to say that we already have many solutions, and we know which solutions to implement, for example, such as renewable sources of energy or some energy efficiency measures, home insulation, and so on. Even IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, describes this pretty well. So I think it's also important to focus on the implementation part of this, and yeah, just to know that we already know in many of the areas how to reduce the emission, the global carbon greenhouse gases emissions, and yeah, so that's maybe to add some hope. But of course, I don't think that's the only part of the current crisis, like the technological or the emission part, that, as just my colleague said previously, we also need to include some change in how we work as a society. So
I just realized last thing I want to mention. It's not just that we don't know or that we haven't figured it out, but there are also some interests going against the transformation. And it's not necessarily the states, as was mentioned in the film, but it's also big companies that somehow got rich on this business. So anything is super political. It's never just an academic debate. It's never just, yeah, let's stop using so much car between us. But it's always, you're fighting someone. There's always someone on the other side. which makes it also harder to solve, because the more interest you have on the other side, the more good ideas and good strategies you have working against yourself. So anything regarding this is super politicized. It's inevitable, and it's gonna be a big political struggle. So on the top of everything else, right? On the top of the individual, the community, the top-down level, also something very political. So which makes it interesting at the same time, which makes it a big theme of I would say the whole century that we are at the beginning of.
I agree with everything what has been said. I think that yeah, it's going to be a struggle and we need to be prepared, but it can be also a big wild ride if we are if we're going to join it. So I'm looking forward to seeing you at other events where we hopefully can create more communities and more lasting connections, and get prepared for the struggle, as Ondřej has said, the other side as well, but at the same time to find something that is shared and we're willing to fight for. Thank you so much for joining tonight's or today's discussion about the movie The World According to My Dad. I'm very happy that KineDok is doing such screenings and is enabling a lot of people to watch movies like that create discussions that matter. And as has been mentioned, until tomorrow, you can still watch the movie online. So don't hesitate to contact KineDok so you can watch the movie as well. And one last time, thank you so much to all of our wonderful guests. It was a pleasure having a discussion with you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.